The ballroom shimmered with golden lights, crystal chandeliers reflecting across rows of elegantly dressed guests. A string quartet played softly in the corner, while waiters glided with silver trays of champagne. Tonight was supposed to be the happiest night of Linda's life, her 20th wedding anniversary with Richard. She had spent weeks planning the celebration. Every flower, every ribbon, every detail meant to honor the man she had devoted 20 years of her life to. For 2 decades, she had sacrificed everything: her career, her dreams, her youth, just to build a home and raise their children. Linda stood at the center of the ballroom in a simple yet graceful gown. At 45, she carried herself with quiet dignity, though her eyes revealed a lifetime of exhaustion from giving more than she ever received. Still, she smiled gently, believing this night would finally bring her some joy. Guests clapped and raised their glasses, admiring her for her loyalty and devotion. Then suddenly, the music faltered. A sharp click of heels echoed from the entrance. Every head turned. A younger woman strutted into the room like she owned it. Her dress was fiery red, clinging to her figure, her smile smug, her eyes locked on Linda. Whispers spread like wildfire. It was Khloe, Richard's mistress. Gasps filled the room. Some guests covered their mouths in shock. Others leaned closer to one another, whispering in disbelief. How could she dare to come here? This was Linda's night. This was supposed to be a celebration of 20 years of marriage. Linda froze, her hand trembling as she clutched her glass. Her heart pounded in her chest, her mind refusing to believe what her eyes saw. And yet, deep inside, she had always suspected. Late nights at the office, strange phone calls, excuses that never made sense. But never in her worst nightmares did she imagine Khloe would appear here, in front of everyone, to humiliate her. Khloe's smile widened as she crossed the floor, every step a dagger in Linda's chest. Guests shifted uncomfortably, sensing the storm about to erupt. Richard stood at the far end of the hall, his face unreadable, his eyes darting nervously between his wife and his mistress. Then, before Linda could even gather her breath, Khloe stood face to face with her. Without a word, Khloe raised her hand and delivered a resounding slap across Linda's cheek. The sound cracked through the ballroom like lightning. The string quartet stopped playing. Glasses clinked onto tables. The room fell into stunned silence. Linda staggered back, her cheek burning, her eyes filling with tears she fought desperately to hold back. For 20 years, she had endured in silence, swallowed her pain, and carried her family. And tonight, in front of everyone, she was stripped of her dignity in the cruelest way possible. Every guest held their breath, waiting for Richard's reaction. Would he defend his wife? Would he stand by her side after all she had given him? But Richard took a step forward, his gaze cold, his jaw tight. He moved toward Khloe, not Linda. He placed a protective hand on his mistress's shoulder and glared at his wife. And then, in front of everyone, Richard opened his mouth to speak. Words that would shatter Linda's world forever. The sting of Khloe's slap still burned on Linda's cheek, but the greater pain was inside her chest. 20 years of marriage, 20 years of loyalty, and in a single moment she had been reduced to nothing but a public humiliation. She stood frozen, her fingers trembling around the empty wine glass she still held. Her knees threatened to buckle beneath her. Richard's words came sharp and merciless, cutting through her shock. Stop embarrassing yourself, Linda. This is Khloe. She is the woman I love. The room erupted in murmurs, waves of disbelief crashing among the guests. Some stared at Linda with pity, others with judgment, but none dared to speak aloud. Linda's ears rang. Her world spun. She looked at Richard, the man she had trusted since she was 25, the father of her children, the man she believed would stand beside her until the end. His face was hard, unrecognizable, as if the man she had loved was already gone. Her lips parted, but no words came. How could she defend herself? How could she fight back when the betrayal came not from a stranger, but from the man whose vows had once promised to cherish her forever? A tear slipped down her cheek, though she tried desperately to hold it in. She had always been strong in silence, swallowing her struggles so no one else would have to bear them. She had raised 3 sons, triplets, while Richard built his empire. She stayed home, cooking, cleaning, making sure their lives ran smoothly. When Richard came home late, she never complained. When he was distant, she told herself he was stressed from work. She endured every lonely night, every broken promise, because she believed her sacrifices were building a stronger family. And now, in front of the world, she realized her sacrifices meant nothing to him. Guests whispered, "Poor woman, she gave him everything." While others muttered, "She should have seen it coming." Every word pierced her deeper. Linda wanted to scream, to collapse, to run out of the ballroom and never look back. But her legs wouldn't move. She stood trapped in her shame, her heart begging for someone, anyone, to defend her. Khloe leaned closer, her smirk dripping with cruelty. "You should step aside gracefully, Linda. Richard doesn't need you anymore. You're outdated." The words sliced through Linda like a knife. Outdated. That was how they saw her now. A used-up woman at 45, discarded for someone younger, shinier, more exciting. She lowered her eyes, hiding the storm inside her. Her entire body trembled, but she clenched her hands, refusing to let Khloe see her break. Still, her silence only made the room feel heavier, more suffocating. For a moment, she thought she might faint. Then, just as her strength seemed ready to give out, the doors of the ballroom burst open with a loud crash. All eyes turned toward the entrance. 3 tall young men strode in, their expressions dark and furious, their presence commanding immediate attention. They were her sons, and their arrival was about to change everything. The ballroom froze as the heavy double doors slammed against the walls. Every head turned, eyes widening at the sight of 3 young men entering together. Their steps were firm, shoulders squared, and their presence carried the kind of authority that silenced even the loudest whispers. They were Linda's sons, Ethan, Daniel, and Michael. Born only minutes apart, the triplets shared the same sharp jawline and piercing eyes, but each carried himself with a distinct power that spoke of his own success. Ethan, the youngest by minutes, was the genius behind a booming tech empire. Daniel, calm but commanding, controlled one of the city's most lucrative real estate firms. And Michael, the eldest, ruled the world of finance with an iron grip. But tonight, they were not CEOs. Tonight, they were sons who had walked into a battlefield where their mother stood wounded and humiliated. The guests murmured in awe, recognizing the young men whose names often appeared in business magazines. Some gasped, "The triplets, they're here." Others whispered, "They're all CEOs now. What will they do?" Ethan's eyes immediately found Linda. His chest tightened at the sight of her tear-stained cheeks, her trembling frame. Anger flared hot within him. Daniel clenched his fists so tightly his knuckles turned white. Michael, though usually composed, felt his blood boiling. They moved as one, crossing the ballroom floor like a storm. Khloe's smug smile faltered for the first time as the triplets drew closer. Even Richard stiffened, his jaw tightening. He had never looked smaller than he did in that moment, facing the sons who had once worshipped him, but now looked at him with blazing contempt. Ethan spoke first, his voice sharp and cold. "What is the meaning of this?" His eyes burned into Richard, but his hand gently rested on Linda's shoulder, steadying her. Daniel's gaze turned to Khloe. "You dare lay a hand on our mother in front of all these people? Do you have any idea who she is?" His words cut through the silence like a whip. Michael, taller and sterner than his brothers, stepped between Linda and Richard, his broad frame shielding her completely. He stared his father down with eyes that carried the weight of 25 years. "You humiliated her in front of everyone. And for what? For this woman?" The guests leaned in, their hearts racing as if they were watching a live drama unfold. Cameras flashed discreetly, phones lifted to capture the confrontation. The atmosphere crackled with tension, each second dragging heavier than the last. Richard's face reddened. He tried to muster authority, but his voice wavered. "This is none of your concern. Stay out of it." Michael's jaw clenched. "None of our concern? She is our mother. Everything we are today, we owe to her sacrifices. If you think we will stand by while you destroy her, you are gravely mistaken." The room erupted into gasps. For the first time, Richard looked cornered. Khloe's hand clutched his arm, her bravado slipping. Linda's lips parted, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Please don't. This isn't your fight." But her sons ignored her plea. Because for them, this wasn't just a fight. It was the beginning of a war. The ballroom was thick with tension, silence broken only by the nervous shuffling of guests and the faint clinking of glasses. All eyes remained fixed on the standoff. Richard, red-faced and cornered, Khloe clutching his arm with forced bravado, and the triplets standing like a wall of steel before their mother. Richard's chest heaved as he struggled to regain control. His pride had been challenged, his authority undermined in front of hundreds of witnesses. For a man like him, accustomed to obedience and respect, nothing was more dangerous than humiliation. He straightened his tie, cleared his throat, and raised his voice for all to hear. "Enough, I won't stand here and be lectured by my own children." His words rang bitter, slicing through the room. He turned to the crowd as though seeking allies. "For years, I have carried this family on my back. Every luxury, every opportunity, every success you three boast of today, it came from me." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some nodded, others frowned. But Richard wasn't finished. He placed an arm firmly around Khloe's waist, pulling her closer, as if to seal his decision. "This woman, Khloe, is the one I love now. I will not hide it any longer. Linda, I want a divorce. Tonight marks not the celebration of 20 years, but the beginning of my new life." The words dropped like bombs, shattering what little strength Linda had left. Her knees wobbled, and she gripped Michael's arm just to stay upright. A divorce? Announced in front of all their friends, colleagues, and family? After 20 years of loyalty, after every sacrifice, her heart twisted, breaking into shards too sharp to gather. The guests gasped louder this time, outrage mingling with shock. Whispers flew like daggers. How could he? Announcing it like this, humiliating his wife on her anniversary. Some shook their heads in disgust. Others recorded on their phones, eager to capture every scandalous second. Khloe smirked, resting her head against Richard's shoulder, her eyes sparkling with triumph. To her, this was victory. To steal a husband was one thing, but to have him publicly discard his wife for her, this was power. Ethan's fists clenched so tightly the veins in his arms bulged. His voice quivered with rage as he stepped forward. "You call this love? You betray the woman who stood by you for 20 years, who raised your children, who sacrificed her life for your success, and you call this love?" Richard's eyes narrowed. "You will not speak to me that way. I am your father." Daniel's voice boomed, steady and unyielding. "A father protects his family. A father does not destroy his wife's dignity to parade his mistress." Michael's glare was colder than steel. "If you divorce her, you don't just lose a wife, you lose us too." The crowd roared with whispers, the drama unfolding like a play too raw to be fiction. Richard's face twisted with fury, veins pulsing in his temples. He opened his mouth, ready to fire back, but suddenly Khloe tugged on his sleeve, whispering urgently in his ear. And what she whispered would ignite a scandal far greater than anyone in that ballroom expected. The weight of Richard's words pressed down on Linda like 1,000 stones. Divorce, public rejection, humiliation in front of the very people who once praised her for her devotion. Her chest tightened, her breath shallow, and the ballroom around her blurred into a swirl of colors and murmurs. Her grip on Michael's arm weakened and she stumbled backward. "Mom!" Ethan's voice pierced the tension, steadying her just as her knees nearly gave way. Daniel wrapped an arm around her shoulders, guiding her toward a chair. The crowd shifted uneasily, torn between curiosity and pity. Some guests wiped at their eyes, shaken by the cruelty they had witnessed. Others whispered, their words cutting like blades. "She looks so fragile. I almost feel sorry for her." Linda lowered her head into her hands, her body trembling. For years she had hidden her pain, always smiling through loneliness, always swallowing her tears so her children wouldn't see. But tonight the dam broke, and for the first time, the world saw her cracks. Her mind spiraled back through time, memories flooding in like an unstoppable tide. She remembered her wedding day at 25, standing beside Richard, eyes full of hope, heart brimming with love. She believed in forever. She remembered the sleepless nights when the triplets were born. Feeding one while rocking another, singing lullabies through exhaustion while Richard stayed late at work. She never complained. She told herself he was working for their future. She remembered birthdays when Richard was absent, promising he'd make it up next time. She decorated the cakes alone, lit the candles, and clapped with her sons so they wouldn't notice their father's empty chair. She remembered anniversaries where Richard gave her expensive jewelry, but no warmth, no tenderness. She wore the gifts anyway, hoping each year would be different. And she remembered nights she sat alone by the window, waiting for him, convincing herself that silence was better than confrontation. That enduring quietly was what a good wife did. Every memory cut deeper, showing her how much of her life had been poured into a man who no longer valued her. Tears spilled freely now, running down her cheeks as she whispered, "Why wasn't I enough?" Ethan knelt beside her, his voice fierce but tender. "Mom, don't say that. You gave us everything. You are more than enough." Daniel tightened his grip around her. "You are the reason we are who we are today. Never forget that." Michael looked at her with steady eyes, determination blazing. He may think he's strong with her by his side, but he's about to learn what real strength looks like. Linda's heart ached at her son's words. Their love gave her a fragile thread of hope, but her spirit was still shattered. She looked at Richard and Khloe, laughing quietly together across the room, as if her suffering meant nothing. Her lips quivered. She whispered almost to herself, "How do I fight against this? How do I face a world that already thinks I've lost?" And just then, Ethan leaned closer, whispering something into her ear that would plant the first seed of a plan that could change everything. That night, after the disastrous anniversary, Linda sat in her bedroom, staring blankly at the floor. The house that once felt like a sanctuary now seemed hollow, cold, and unfamiliar. The framed photos on the dresser mocked her, smiles from vacations, holidays, birthdays, moments she thought were real but now seemed like illusions. She clutched the edge of her bed, her body trembling as silent sobs escaped her. For 20 years she had held her family together with invisible threads of sacrifice and love. Yet it all unraveled in one evening. "How could he?" she whispered into the empty room. "How could he throw away our life so easily?" The triplets stood outside her door, listening to her muffled cries. Each son felt his chest tighten, fury burning behind his sorrow. They had seen their mother give everything. They had seen her patch torn clothes when money was tight, cook meals from scraps, and smile through exhaustion just so they could have a better future. And now, to watch her broken because of Richard's betrayal, it was unbearable. Michael, the eldest by a few minutes, pushed the door open. "Mom," his voice was steady but soft. Linda quickly wiped her face, forcing a smile. "I'm fine," she said, though her red eyes betrayed her. "No, you're not," Ethan said firmly, stepping into the room. "And you don't have to be." Daniel closed the door behind them, shutting out the world. He pulled a chair closer and sat down, leaning forward. "Mom, you've carried this family on your back for 2 decades. It's time we carry you." Linda shook her head, panic flickering in her eyes. "No, please, don't get involved. This is between me and your father. I don't want you dragged into this ugliness." Michael knelt beside her, taking her hand. "It became our fight the moment he let that woman humiliate you in front of the world. He doesn't get to destroy you and walk away. Not while we're alive." Ethan's eyes darkened. "He thinks power protects him. He thinks money hides his sins. But we have power too, and we'll use it." Daniel's voice was calm but filled with steel. "We know people. We have resources. If he thinks he can rebuild a life with her without consequences, he's wrong." Linda looked at each of her sons, torn between fear and pride. "Promise me you won't do anything reckless. Promise me you won't become like him." Michael's grip tightened. "We promise to protect you, that's all." But the fire in their eyes told a deeper truth. Each son had already made a silent vow. Richard and Khloe would pay. Later that night, while Linda finally drifted into a restless sleep, the brothers gathered in Michael's office. The city lights flickered outside the window as they leaned over documents, laptops, and files. Ethan tapped the keyboard rapidly. "I've already started digging into Dad's company accounts. Something doesn't add up." Daniel added, "And Khloe? She's not as spotless as she pretends. I'll find everything on her." Michael's jaw tightened. "Good, because if we're going to take them down, we'll need undeniable proof." And just as Ethan's screen lit up with a suspicious transaction, he realized they had stumbled onto a secret that could destroy Richard's entire empire. The glow from Ethan's laptop screen lit the brothers' faces as they huddled around his desk. Rows of numbers, codes, and transfers scrolled down the screen like an endless maze. Ethan's fingers flew across the keyboard, his mind sharp, calculating. He had built his tech company from nothing, and he knew how to track digital footprints better than most investigators. Dad was sloppy. Ethan muttered, narrowing his eyes. Or maybe he thought no one would ever dare to look this closely. Michael leaned over his shoulder, his voice tense. What are we looking at? Shell accounts, Ethan explained, highlighting a cluster of suspicious transactions. Funds being funneled offshore. Look at these dates. They align perfectly with his late-night meetings and sudden business trips. He's been bleeding money out of the company for years. Daniel frowned, his jaw tightening. And I'm willing to bet Khloe is right in the middle of it. Ethan clicked another folder, pulling up a list of joint accounts. His stomach dropped. Oh, she's not just in the middle of it. She's cashing in. He's transferred hundreds of thousands to her name. Cars, properties, even jewelry. All funded through illegal siphons from the company. Michael's fists clenched at his sides. So while Mom was scraping together meals and holding the family together, he was stealing from his own empire to shower his mistress with luxuries. Daniel's voice was cold. That's not just betrayal, it's fraud. If this goes public, it won't just ruin his marriage. It'll ruin him completely. The brothers exchanged a look. For the first time that night, there was something beyond anger in their eyes. There was purpose. Ethan leaned back in his chair, exhaling sharply. We can use this, but we need more than raw data. We need proof that can stand against him if he tries to fight back. Michael nodded. Then we keep digging. We build a case so strong he can't escape. No deals, no excuses. He wanted a new life? Fine. We'll take the old one from him piece by piece. Daniel smirked slightly, though his voice carried no joy. I'll start pulling Khloe's history, business ties, past relationships, everything. If she's done this before, we'll find a pattern. Ethan's fingers typed faster, adrenaline surging through him. Good, because once we expose them both, not only will they lose everything, they'll regret ever laying a hand on Mom. Just then, the laptop chimed with an alert. Ethan frowned, opening a hidden file he hadn't noticed before. His eyes widened as he scrolled, disbelief hardening into fury. Oh my God. Michael bent closer. What is it? Ethan turned the screen so his brothers could see. It's not just siphoning funds. He's been covering up losses with fake contracts. If the board finds out, he could face criminal charges. Daniel let out a low whistle. So the great Richard isn't just unfaithful. He's a fraud. He could go to prison for this. Michael's eyes blazed. Then that's exactly where we'll send him. But before they could celebrate their discovery, Ethan's system pinged again, this time with a warning. Someone else was already tracking their activity. Someone who didn't want these secrets uncovered. While Ethan continued digging into Richard's financial misdeeds, Daniel set his focus on Khloe. He knew a woman like her didn't appear out of nowhere. People who lived by deception always left traces behind. Late into the night, Daniel sat at his desk, his laptop glowing as he sifted through databases, court records, and social media trails. Years of running his real estate empire had sharpened his instincts. He could smell fraud the way a wolf smelled fear. It didn't take long. He found her name tied to a lawsuit in another state. A wealthy businessman had accused her of manipulating him into investments that mysteriously disappeared. The case had been settled quietly out of court. Daniel leaned back, his lips curling in disgust. Classic gold digger, he muttered. He dug deeper. An old newspaper article popped up. Another scandal, another wealthy man, another sudden downfall that coincided with Khloe's presence in his life. And again, no charges stuck. She was smart, careful, always leaving just enough distance to avoid direct blame while her victims crumbled. Scrolling further, Daniel found photos of Khloe on vacation in luxury resorts, always with different men. One in Dubai, another in Monaco, then a third in Paris. Each time the man was older, wealthy, and looked infatuated. And each time within months the man suffered financial collapse, lawsuits, or divorce. Daniel's stomach turned. She's done this before. She's perfected it. He organized the files, screenshots, and news clippings into a folder. The evidence painted a chilling portrait. Khloe was a predator, moving from one victim to the next, leaving ruin in her wake. Michael entered the study, his brow furrowed. Any luck? Daniel turned the screen toward him. Luck? More like a jackpot. Khloe's history is a trail of broken men. She's been pulling this act for years. Dad is just her latest victim. Michael scanned the files, his jaw tightening. He thinks she loves him, but she's just waiting for the right moment to strip him dry and leave him in pieces. Ethan joined them, still holding a thick folder of Richard's shady accounts. Then we hit them both. We show the world what kind of man Richard has become, and we show them exactly who Khloe really is. Daniel nodded, but his expression remained grim. We have to be careful. She's clever and she knows how to protect herself. If she senses we're coming after her, she'll twist the story and play the victim. Michael's eyes darkened. Then we won't give her the chance. When the moment comes, we expose her so completely that she can't recover. Daniel tapped the folder. I'll prepare the dossier. Names, dates, victims, everything. Once the board sees this, they'll realize Richard isn't just a fool. He's aligned himself with a criminal in disguise. Ethan crossed his arms. Good, but something tells me Khloe won't go down quietly. A woman like her doesn't lose without a fight. Michael exhaled slowly, glancing toward the hallway where their mother's room lay quiet. Let her fight, because this time she's not facing some lonely rich man blinded by flattery. She's facing us. But none of them knew that Khloe was already suspicious, and she had her own plan to strike first. Khloe lounged on the velvet sofa of Richard's penthouse, sipping a glass of champagne. The city lights glittered through the window, but her mind was elsewhere. For the first time since she had strutted into the anniversary party, a faint unease prickled at the back of her neck. She replayed the scene in her mind, the way the triplets had looked at her, their fury radiating like fire. They weren't ordinary spoiled heirs. They were men with power, connections, and determination. And that made them dangerous. Richard walked in, loosening his tie, his face still sour from the disastrous evening. Those boys embarrassed me, he muttered, pacing. Challenging me in front of everyone, disrespecting their father. They'll regret it. Khloe tilted her head, studying him. Don't underestimate them. They're not children anymore. They're CEOs. They're watching us, Richard, he scoffed, pouring himself a drink. Let them watch. They wouldn't dare go against me. But Khloe wasn't convinced. She had seen men like them before, the kind who didn't back down, the kind who struck when least expected. And the way Ethan's eyes had burned into her, it was clear he wasn't just angry. He was searching. She set down her glass and opened her laptop. Within minutes, she pulled up discreet reports, her own web of informants feeding her whispers from the business world. She typed in Ethan's name, then Daniel's, then Michael's. What she found made her smirk fade. All three were not only successful, they were formidable. Ethan had contracts with the government for advanced security systems. Daniel owned prime properties across the city. Michael's investment firm held stakes in nearly every major company in the region. Together, they could rival empires. Her eyes narrowed. They're gonna dig, she whispered to herself. And if they dig too deep? She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. She knew what they would find. Richard dropped into the chair across from her, swirling his drink. What are you plotting now? Khloe leaned forward, her tone sharp. Listen to me. Your sons are not your allies anymore. They're your enemies. If they uncover certain things, our accounts, our arrangements, you won't just lose your company. You'll lose everything, and I will not go down with you. Richard's brow furrowed. What are you saying? I'm saying we strike first, Khloe hissed. We discredit them before they discredit us. If the world sees them as ungrateful, reckless, dangerous, even cruel to their own father, no one will believe their accusations when they come. Richard frowned, uneasy. You want to turn the public against my own children? Khloe's lips curved into a cold smile. Not want to. Need to. We destroy their credibility before they destroy ours. She began drafting a message, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Anonymous tips to tabloids, whispers of corruption, scandals fabricated from shadows. She knew the power of rumor. Once it spread, it could stain even the cleanest reputation. Richard watched her, doubt flickering in his eyes. But Khloe's determination was unshakable. And by the time morning came, headlines would explode with stories about the triplets, stories that could shatter their reputations before they even struck their first blow. The next morning, Michael's phone buzzed relentlessly with notifications. He rubbed his temples, scrolling through headline after headline splashed across financial news sites and gossip blogs. Triplet CEOs under suspicion, one article shouted. Whispers of corruption. Did success come too easily? Another sneered. Unfilial sons humiliate father at anniversary gala, a tabloid screamed. Each headline was sharper than a dagger. Photos from the anniversary circulated everywhere. Ethan's furious face, Daniel's pointed finger at Khloe, Michael shielding Linda. But the captions twisted the truth. Aggressive sons attack their father's new partner. Jealous heirs unhinged. A family feud that reveals dangerous ambition. Michael's jaw tightened. "She's fast," he muttered, tossing the phone onto the table. Ethan entered, his own phone in hand, his face pale with anger. "It's everywhere. She planted this. I can trace the original leak back to a PR firm she's worked with before." Daniel slammed a folder down on the table. "And she's not just smearing us. She's manipulating public opinion. Look, talk shows are already discussing whether we're spoiled sons trying to destroy our father." Linda, sitting quietly nearby, pressed her hand to her mouth, her heart aching. "My boys, they're turning the world against you because of me." Ethan crouched in front of her, his voice firm but gentle. "No, Mom, don't say that. This isn't your fault. It's his betrayal and her poison. They can try to spin the story, but the truth is on our side." Michael leaned against the desk, his mind already racing. "If we respond emotionally, we lose. We can't just issue statements or deny accusations. We need evidence so undeniable, so explosive that their lies collapse instantly." Daniel nodded. "And we have it. Khloe's history, Dad's fraud, the stolen funds. But we have to time this perfectly. If we rush, they'll twist it again. If we wait too long, their narrative takes root." Ethan tapped on his laptop, eyes burning with focus. "Then we don't wait long. We hit them at the board meeting. That's where it matters. The shareholders, the directors, they won't ignore financial crimes. Once we expose him in that room, his empire crumbles, and Khloe falls with him." Linda looked up, her voice trembling. "But what if he denies it? What if they turn the tables again?" Michael's eyes softened as he met hers. "Then we make sure they can't. We'll gather every document, every transfer, every victim Khloe has destroyed. When the truth comes out, it won't just be a scandal, it'll be their downfall." Daniel leaned forward, determination carved into his face. "Mom, you spent 20 years protecting us. Now it's our turn. Whatever it takes, we will protect you. We will restore your dignity." Linda's eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't only from pain. For the first time since that terrible night, a flicker of hope glowed in her chest. Michael straightened, his voice steady and commanding. "Then it's decided. At the board meeting, we end this. No mercy." But none of them knew that Khloe and Richard were already preparing their own surprise for that very same meeting, one that could blindside them completely. The boardroom gleamed with polished oak tables and leather chairs, the air heavy with tension as directors and shareholders took their seats. Richard stood at the head of the table, his suit crisp, his expression carefully composed. Khloe sat beside him, dressed elegantly in navy, her eyes glinting with false confidence. "This meeting," Richard began smoothly, "is to address recent distractions. My personal life has unfortunately become public. But I assure you, the company remains strong under my leadership." Khloe placed a hand on his arm, playing the part of the supportive partner. Murmurs ran through the room. Some directors nodded, others exchanged skeptical glances. Richard clicked a remote, projecting slides of company growth charts, downplaying the headlines swirling outside. "As for my sons, I regret their behavior at the anniversary celebration. They acted emotionally, and their rash actions have fueled gossip. But rest assured, I am handling it." Just then, the doors opened. The triplets walked in, their steps confident, their presence commanding silence. Linda followed behind them, her dignity restored in a tailored suit, her head held high. Gasps echoed through the room. One director whispered, "The triplets?" Another muttered, "And Mrs. Linda?" Richard's smile faltered. "You don't belong here," he snapped. Michael stepped forward, his voice calm but edged with steel. "We belong wherever the truth does." Ethan set down a thick folder on the table. "We've reviewed the accounts, the transfers, the offshore shells. This company isn't strong, it's bleeding because you've been siphoning funds to cover your indulgences." The room erupted in shocked gasps. Richard's face reddened. "Lies, fabrications." Daniel pulled out a second folder, laying photos of Khloe with different wealthy men across the table. "And while you were looting the company, she was perfecting her routine. Manipulate, drain, abandon. You're not her first victim, you're just her latest." Khloe's mask cracked, her eyes widening. "That's not true." But Ethan clicked his laptop, projecting documents onto the big screen. Wire transfers, fake contract, offshore accounts linked directly to Richard and Khloe. It's all here. Dates, signatures, amounts, cross-checked with government records. There's no denying it. The directors leaned in, voices rising in outrage. One barked, "Is this true, Richard?" Another hissed, "Do you realize the legal consequences?" Richard stammered, sweat beading at his forehead. "This is an attack. My sons are jealous of my success. They want to take my position." Michael's voice thundered, "We don't want your position. We want justice for our mother. For 20 years she carried this family while you betrayed her. You don't deserve her, and you don't deserve this company." Linda stepped forward, her voice steady though her eyes glistened. "I gave my life to a man who never valued me, but today I stand with my sons. The truth cannot be hidden anymore." The room fell silent, the weight of her words echoing like a verdict. Then the chairman of the board leaned forward, his voice cold. "Richard, based on this evidence, we may have no choice but to vote for your removal." And just as Richard opened his mouth to protest, the chairman added chillingly, "and to refer this case for criminal investigation." The boardroom erupted in chaos. Directors shouted over one another, some demanding immediate action, others furiously slamming their hands on the table. The chairman's words hung heavy in the air. Removal, criminal investigation. Richard's face drained of color. For the first time in his life, the mask of power slipped, replaced by desperation. "You can't do this," he barked, pounding the table. "I built this company. I made you all rich." The chairman's eyes were cold. "And now you've endangered us all. Fraud, embezzlement, deceit. This company cannot survive with you at the helm. The vote will be unanimous." Khloe clutched Richard's arm, her voice shrill. "Say something. Stop them." But the board members ignored him. Papers shuffled, voices called out, "Remove him. Criminal charges must proceed. He's finished." Ethan projected one last set of documents onto the screen. Photos of Khloe's past victims, testimonies from men she had ruined, and proof of her direct involvement in the siphoning scheme. Gasps filled the room as Khloe's facade shattered completely. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "This isn't real. You can't prove." Daniel's voice cut like steel. "It's already sent to the authorities. By tomorrow morning, the world will know everything." Khloe staggered back, her eyes wide with panic. "Richard, do something." But Richard stood frozen, his empire crumbling, his pride shredded. The man who once commanded fear now looked pitiful, cornered, broken. Michael's voice boomed through the chaos. "You both humiliated our mother in front of the world. Tonight, the world sees who you really are. Criminals, parasites, liars." The directors stood, one by one, their verdict clear. Richard was stripped of his title, his accounts frozen, his reputation obliterated. Security guards entered the room. Richard tried to resist, but his son's eyes bore into him, unyielding. For the first time, he bowed his head in shame. Khloe screamed as guards took her by the arm. "You'll regret this, all of you." But her voice cracked, her mask gone. She was nothing more than another con artist exposed. Through it all, Linda stood silent, her hands trembling, her heart pounding. She had dreamed of this moment, not revenge, but justice. And now, with her sons at her side, it was real. Michael turned to her, his voice softening. "Mom, it's over." Tears streamed down Linda's face, but this time they were tears of release. She whispered, "Thank you, my boys, you gave me back my dignity." Months later, life was different. The scandal had destroyed Richard and Khloe. Both faced lawsuits, debts, and disgrace. Meanwhile, Linda found peace. She lived in a warm home surrounded by love, not lies. The final scene was not in a boardroom, nor a ballroom, but in a sunlit garden. Linda sat in a wicker chair, cradling her grandchild in her arms. Ethan, Daniel, and Michael laughed nearby with their wives, the air filled with children's giggles and the smell of home-cooked food. For the first time in years, Linda's heart was full. No fear, no betrayal, only love, loyalty, and family. She looked around at the joy surrounding her, then closed her eyes, smiling as peace washed over her. Because in the end, the woman once humiliated now sat as the honored queen of a family that adored her. A mother's love never fails. If you feel touched, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.